What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Bonus Point Podcast. Today's episode is a good one. Bit of global rugby journey mixed with one of the most chaotic and entertaining Super Rugby weekends we've had all season. I've been gone for a couple of weeks. I've been over in Japan, and I've got to start there because honestly, this trip exceeded expectations in every way possible, along with incredible food, historic landmarks, and experiencing so many different environments in the small cities. One bucket list of mine was to check out a Japanese top league game, as I've been watching so much of it on YouTube, and really excited to dive into that, as well as everything that was just the chaos that was Super Rugby over the weekend. So that's what we got in store. Recap of those games, as well as my journey to Japan. Let's get straight into the episode. This is the Bonus Point Podcast. Okay, so as said, we had the chance to head over to Japan. Incredible couple of weeks. I've definitely come back about 10 pounds heavier, got a lot of steps in. I was able to run along some beautiful areas as well, but we also got a chance to head along to the Black Rams versus Honda Heat game in Tokyo. And it just reinforced something for me that I think we all feel is a known factor with rugby. And it's wherever you go in the world, you always see that rugby is a community game at its core. We're sitting at the game. My missus speaks the language pretty well because she did a couple of university courses before she went over. I don't speak a lick of the language outside of a few phrases. And walking into the stadium full of Japanese fans, which I already knew previously, these fans were energetic, they were passionate, they were all lovely people from my time in the Rugby World Cup in 2019, where we got to go to a lot of the different games. It was very clear that we were not locals. And within minutes, the people next to us, in front of us, behind us, they were so accommodating. They were so welcoming. They were chatting to us. They were smiling. They were trying to connect. They were asking where we're from, why we came to the game. There's this immediate openness that you just don't get in every sport. And one of my favorite moments was when we got asked by the people sitting to the left of us who our favorite players were. And I said immediately, well, I knew why I picked this game. TJ Perenara is one of my favorite players, if not my favorite player. We've had the same first name. I've always loved watching his style of play, how proud of a Māori man he is and a Kiwi. And I think another thing that pushed it over the edge about how much I really enjoy about TJ is how much effort he has put in while living over in Japan, learning the language, embodying the Japanese traditions and customs. And the Black fans, Rams, they've loved it. And when I gave that answer, the whole group around me, they loved that answer as well. Every time he did something well, they all turned to me and they were joking around saying, "Good job, TJ, give me a wink." And then TJ got yellow carded and the fans couldn't wait to give me shit and joke around saying it was my fault because we had the same name. I loved it. This felt just like I would be watching the game back with my mates back home. Even with the slight language barrier, you could feel the shared understanding. Everyone's there for the same reason, and that's for the love of the game. Then you zoom out, you look at what's actually on the field. You've got TJ Perenara running the show for the Black Rams, Pablo Matera for the Honda Heat doing Pablo Matera things as their team struggled to get anything going. I think we watched 3 or 4 lineouts and they just couldn't get one phase together, if not 2. And so that was obviously very disheartening, but as a professional, Matera was able to put a lot of things together, show that composure, show that professionalism, and just continue to truck along. Liam Gill for the Black Rams coming on early, coming off the bench, getting stuck into the breakdown, setting up plays. Isaac Lucas, he was outstanding. I think he had a hat-trick in that game, and he's been a player that I've been following quite closely in the Japanese top league, who I think is always getting mentioned in the Division 1 team of the week. It's just this wild of mix of international experience inside the Japanese league system, along with a lot of promising Japanese talent. The atmosphere was also amazing. It kind of hits you that rugby just doesn't belong in one country or competition anymore. It's properly global. And I think I saw a recent video of the under 85s for New Zealand going over to Sri Lanka and all the amazing atmosphere that came out of Hong Kong Sevens over the weekend. It's just incredible to watch. So big thank you to the Honda Heat, as it was their home game, and to the Black Rams for showing us an amazing time. I can't wait to see how the season unfolds. I'm super stoked. I got a mana wave back from TJ, and the Black Rams are now my team, hoping they pull off a run to win the championship this year. That would be pretty sick. But with that being said, watching that game primed me to come back into the Super Rugby weekend, and things got spicy. And I want to start with the headline because, funnily enough, on the day that this game was occurring, I was at Ashigawa, the flower park. It was where all the wisteria is blooming. It's one of the big reasons why we went over, because my girlfriend is obsessed with the wisteria and the cherry blossoms. And I had to sit down with my phone, watch this live. I grabbed a couple of beers. I was sitting there silently cheering the Chiefs knocking off the Hurricanes. Number 2 beats number 1. Honestly, if you watched the last few weeks, you probably wouldn't have picked it that way. The Hurricanes have looked the most complete team in the competition. Their shape, their continuity, their ability to apply pressure over long periods with their defense, rarely give chances in their 22, arguably having the best scrum half and back row in the competition. It's been absolutely elite. And that's what made this result even more surprising, because for the large parts of this game, especially in the first half, the Canes were in control. They were playing into the wind and still managing territory well enough. And more importantly, they were sticking to their identity. They were holding the ball. They were building phases on attack, forcing Chiefs to make tackles and decisions. They were ruthless on defense and punished so many Chiefs errors or minor infractions. And I think every fan watching that first half had the same thought. If they're doing this into the wind, what's it going to be like when they turn around and they're playing with the wind? You expect them to go up another level, but instead the opposite happened. They came out in the second half with the wind at their backs and started to shift away from what's made them so dangerous this season. More kicking, more territory-focused play, less ball-in-hand pressure, and that's not to say that that approach isn't wrong in itself. Plenty of teams win games by controlling territory and playing the long game. You see it all day long in the Northern Hemisphere. You see it with a lot of teams when they do have that advantage, they want to press it. But for this Hurricane side, it felt like they moved away from their strengths. They stopped asking the same questions of the Chiefs defensively and allowed the game to open up. I don't believe this was the reason the game was lost as well. I want to say the Cam Roigard substitution in extra time, I think it was a mistake, but I don't think it was the reason why they lost the game. I will say I love Anari as a player and as a replacement scrum half for the Canes. I have a signed jersey of his in my closet and I'm waiting to get it framed because I'd love to hang that from when he played at Moana Pacifica. I will not say that he's not a fantastic player, and he's a definite pick for me when looking at this Canes squad. But Cam Roigard at the moment is in another stratosphere over any other scrum half at the moment. And what he can bring to a game, especially after getting 5 minutes of rest, even though he's played 80 minutes, he looked relatively fresh. In my opinion, he is worth keeping on as opposed to bringing on some fresh legs 30 seconds into extra time. I just think that's my opinion, and I feel like Cam Roigard just brings so much to that game, and that could have been the difference maker. Again, not the reason they lost, and there was a lot that went into the loss for the Canes, but I believe that was a mistake. At the same time, you've got to give serious credit to the Chiefs. They went into the change rooms, had a serious chat about staying composed, staying in the fight, being aggressive, and not panicking, and they came out in the second half in red-hot form. Their energy lifted, their execution sharpened, and they started to win key moments, collisions, breakdowns, and obviously finishing with that super point, which, man, Wallace Sititi, back from some considerable time off and then delivered when it mattered most. That's a serious statement because it really starts an interesting conversation. The All Blacks' back row depth right now is ridiculous. Artie Savia is always locked in my opinion, even though he's playing overseas at the moment. You've just always got to put him in that team. He just brings something like Roygaard to that team where you have to pick him. I can understand with the overseas portion if Dave Rennie wants to go, no, let's reward our lads who are on the ground, which will be fine because we do have so much depth. But you look at Duplessis, Karifi, Peter Larkai, Devin Flanders, who have all been in red-hot form, and that's just the Canes alone. Then you look at your Luke Jacobsons, your Simon Parkers, your Sammy Penny-Finaus, even your Boshiers have been playing amazing for the Chiefs. Ethan Blackadder when he's fit, Leo Willie, maybe even Anton Segner if he can continue his form for the Blues and sneak his way into that squad somehow, which I don't know how, but he's been playing excellent for the Blues. But now Sititi jumps straight back into that mix. What he offers is a bit different. Explosive, dynamic, capable of producing match-winning moments. Reminds me a little bit about the difference maker that Hoskins Satutu was for his All Blacks career when he came in. He provided something different. Wallace Sititi is just a player that anytime you pick him, he just brings something electric to that team. So the question is, do you pick on consistency? Because a lot of these players have been playing very, very well and Sititi's been out. Or do you pick a guy who can break a game open? Just making that Sititi decision harder every week. And I do not want to be Dave Rennie for a lot of reasons because he's got a lot to do coming into this All Blacks fold so fresh. But it'll be interesting to see who comes out at the end of the Super Rugby season heading into that All Blacks squad. Now shifting over to one of the best stories of the weekend, the Fijian Drua. And that brings a humongous smile to my face because winning away from home and looking genuinely good doing it, composed, physical, and way more controlled than we've seen from them historically on the road. Because that's always been the knock. At home, they're electric. Away from home, less reliable, but there was something different about this. And Fijian Drua going into Canberra, knocking off the Brumbies 33-28. And straight up, if you're a Brumbies fan blaming the ref, I understand the frustration. There were some tight calls, especially around the TMO and that yellow card. Honestly, I personally believe the game was lost before any of that. You look at the numbers and it makes no sense if that's your argument because they had 55% possession, more line breaks, more running meters, and the Drua missed 30 tackles. So on paper, that should be a comfortable Brumbies win. You think about the Brumbies team that is on paper at the moment, they would scoop that up any day. But here's the killer, in my opinion, is 10 handling errors in the first 35 minutes for the Brumbies, and they got smashed at the breakdown, as well as 10 turnovers to 5. That's the game right there. No continuity, no pressure built. Every time they looked like they were getting on top, drop ball, penalty, turnover. You just can't win games like that. And the Drua, they do what they do best. Chaos, pressure, punishing mistakes. They jumped out to a 22-7 halftime lead, and suddenly the Brumbies are chasing the game instead of controlling it. Even when the Brumbies made their run in the second half, and they did, to be fair, they made a considerable run. They looked to have almost pulled off this Cinderella story. They just couldn't land the knockout blow. The moment in the 54th minute, I think it was, sums it up perfectly. Sapsford puts Meredith through the line wide open, and it's just a drop. 1 minute later, Drua go the other way, and they score. That's a 14-point swing, and even if it's only 7 on the board, you've got to give serious credit to the Drua. And I think one thing to mention is this isn't just a rugby story. It's a human story. There were a lot of players dealing with the cyclone back home. Guys talking about trees going through roofs, families huddled in the houses. They still showed up. They still trained. They said, we're going to make history this week. First ever win in Canberra. Snapped a 14-game losing streak in Australia. That's massive. And they didn't fluke it. They earned it through physicality, speed, dominating the breakdown when it mattered. It was incredible. For the Brumbies, this one's got to hurt. Not just because it's upsetting, but because of the timing. They're clinging to fourth place. Reds are right behind them with a game in hand. And now you're heading into a tough run home with basically zero margin for error. So I think the question becomes, is this just a bad night or is this a warning sign? Because if your set piece is strong, your stats look good, but you're still losing games through errors and breakdown pressure, that's a deeper issue. And heading into Super Round against the Hurricanes, a very badly wounded Hurricanes, they've got to fix it fast, because teams like the Drua, they'll hurt you with chaos, but top teams, they'll punish you clinically. And the Hurricanes are everything that I can see as a top team. All right, let's get into what might be the most chaotic comeback of the season. The Western Force knocking off the Crusaders 31-26 in Perth after being down 19. And yes, context matters. The Crusaders are missing a variety of key players. They've been disrupted, and they're not quite the same dominant force, but the Western Force deserve credit. They were disciplined, they were direct, they took chances well. And one player to watch, I'm going to say it, Zach Lomax. He's been building nicely over the past couple of weeks, off the bench showing glimpses, and then he gets a start and delivers. I'm not going to count my chickens before they hatch. I'm not going to turn around and say he's the next Joseph Suaalii who can come from league to union and save Rugby Australia and provide that missing piece that they can to have their World Cup run. But he's showing some promise because he was everywhere. You could see that the league background too, especially under the high ball. 3 huge takes off box kicks, the try in the 54th minute to level up the game. Massive moments. And now it's about backing up. If he can keep that level of performance, the Force suddenly have a genuine attacking threat that teams need to plan for. And I think it's super legitimate. You saw the slickness of the phase play that came from, I think it was that wraparound pass or that behind the back pass that he received, and just the way he's able to attack the line. It's looking really promising for the Western Force. But this game isn't just about Lomax. It's about momentum swings. And I feel a Crusaders collapse is starting to look like a pattern. They were flying early, 19-0 up after 22 minutes, helped by a yellow card, looking completely in control. Same story as the Reds game the week before, and then they just switched off. Rob Penny basically said it himself: mental lapse, loss of sharpness. Suddenly the Force pile on 19 unanswered points. And I think when it comes to the Western Force, once they get belief, they're a team that cannot be stopped when they're playing clinically. I've always said that if the Force are on, they are one team that I always think has a chance. The Crusaders couldn't wrestle it back. They got that belief, they got that continuity, and they just kept it going. And that's the worrying trend right now. Back-to-back losses in Australia, both after building strong leads. It's not structure, it's not talent, it's composure. Errors crept in, discipline dropped. When it got tight, when it got late, they couldn't close. Even though they'd equalised late, only to have it pulled back, their try through Springer, fine margins. You make your own luck in those moments, but I think it's going to come down to fine margins, and you've got to produce in those situations. And credit to the Force. They didn't fluke it. They defended their line 3 times in the first half. They stayed in the fight, then took over physically and emotionally. Tizano at the breakdown to win the penalty at the death. That's just toughness. And suddenly their season's alive. 3-6, finals hopes flickering, but performances like that, that's belief. So, big picture, Western Force are building. Lomax, he looks like a genuine weapon in union already. And the Crusaders, they've got some serious questions to answer because they've got to figure out why they can't put these teams away. Is it a mental thing? Is it something they're just not clicking in combinations? Because in this competition, if you leave the door open, teams are going to come straight through it. And with less than a week before they open their shiny new 25,000 seat stadium in Christchurch, the home side for this Super Round are going to need to use that energy to reignite their championship hopes, because it's looking like it's closing time. The other two games I'm just going to touch on really briefly. The Waratahs, they got it done 29-14 over Moana, but this was way tighter than the scoreline suggested. Moana actually led at halftime despite having barely any ball. That's off the back of, I think it was Matavao just playing heads-up rugby, 2 quick tap tries, catching the Tars asleep, and suddenly they're in control without territorial possession. But the second half is where the game flipped. The Tars bench made a huge impact. Their tight 5 starts to dominate. 2 tries, looked completely composed in the second finish in the corner before the lightning delay. Absolute class. So even after the delay, Moana had chances, camped on the line, but the Tars defense, it helped. It was big moments, like Pete Samu holding someone up over the line. That's match-winning stuff, and I love to see that from him because I really hope that that's something that puts him back in the Wallabies fold, because I've always said that if Pete Samu's in a Wallabies team, they've got a chance. He's good. So Waratahs get the win, stay in the finals conversation. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with them this coming weekend in Super Round. And then Blues versus Highlanders, absolute freaking chaos. 47-40, one of the games of the season. Highlanders come out firing. Adam Lennox, absolutely unreal. Sniping runs, 2 tries, just causing problems all night. But Blues responded like a top team. So Tutu, Segner, Dowry, just building pressure, taking control, and then they blow it open early in the second half to go up 33-14. Game should have been done by there, but it's not. Highlanders just kept coming, big plays, broken field tries. Suddenly it's 1 score deep into the 80th minute. And that's the theme. Blues had control but couldn't quite shut the door. And in the end, it takes a knock-on from Lennox to finally kill it. But the Blues get the win, move up the ladder. And the Highlanders, I've been saying it all season, they're dangerous, they're chaotic. If they tighten up a few things, they're a real threat. But you also look at their team on paper, they do have some studs, but when you just look at the collection of the players, I personally don't see their combinations always clicking. They can produce moments, but I just don't think they're an 80-minute team. They're a threat, but they're not a huge threat, in my opinion, which is disappointing because I love the Highlanders. They're an awesome team when they're red hot. So big weekend, big swings, and after a few teams really showed their hand, it really just blows this whole championship picture wide open. So I'm really excited to see what happens in Super Round. And with that in mind, let's chat about this weekend for Super Round. The games for my lock game where I think it's done and dusted, it's the Chiefs versus Drua. Unless the Chiefs decide to experiment or rest players or something else that I'm not aware of, I think the Chiefs will get over the Drua. I'm happy they got the win away from home. I'm really excited for how the Drua look, but I think the Chiefs are a lock. They're just on a roll, and man, we've got so many talented players at the moment in that Chiefs side. Some guys who have been not my pick of the litter when I first saw them, and I would have chosen different players to be in their positions, but there have been some players that have been producing week in and week out. It has been incredible. And Quinn Tupaia, if you don't say he's not the best number 12 or centre in New Zealand, if not one of the best in the world at the moment, you're dreaming. You're not even looking at the game. My upset of the weekend is going to be the Brumbies versus Hurricanes. I think a lot of people are going to be picking the Hurricanes. And although the Hurricanes are going to be pissed they let that one slip against the Chiefs, and I mean pissed, I think the Brumbies are going to come to scorch the earth from them losing that match over the weekend as well. And statistically, they've won 6 out of 8 against the Canes. I'm going to circle that as my must-watch game, and I think that's going to be my upset of the weekend because I know a lot of people are going to pick the Canes to win. The other 3 games, pretty easy for me. I think the Crusaders over the Tars in their new stadium, they've got to get some energy from this. I mean, there's just going to be so much electricity with their new stadium opening and just everything happening with Super Round. I think they're going to get the win over the Tars, even though the Tars are in good form at the moment. Highlanders over Moana. I think Highlanders have just got something about them where I think they're going to be holding good form this weekend. Really liking what Angus Tarval is bringing to the team. And Moana, I think they've just got too much going on and they just haven't been able to any continuity. And Blues over Reds. I think although the Blues couldn't shut the door in this weekend's game, I think that the Reds are kind of going back a little bit in what we're expecting from Les Kiss's team, and Blues have just been on fire. Last thing I want to chat about is Moana Pacifica. I haven't had an opportunity to really chat much about this, but it's been all over social media. It has been stated that they will no longer continue due to financial worries, and debate has swirled around New Zealand as to the future of professional rugby in those countries. Full credit to guys like Limo Sapuanga and other Pacifica, and also not other Pacifica players as well, or people who are influential in the rugby space, talking about how important it is to make sure that Moana Pacifica is able to find some type of funding to have them return next year in 2027. I've been seeing a lot of people talk about how it is the fault of World Rugby and they should have come out and they should have stopped this. They should have made sure that this hadn't occurred. And I think it's tough because on one hand, we all want to see Pacifica Rugby thrive. We all see what happened last season when Adi Savia came in and the boost they got, the continuity they started to build, the fan base they started to build. You all see the benefits. But also when it came down to them starting in this competition, funding and how they were going to stay afloat was already an asterisk against their name before they'd even started in the competition. I think we have to look at both sides of it. And although I'm really disappointed with how the Moana team has to end their journey if this is their final season, we have to look at both sides and it has to be sustainable for them to remain in this competition. But I am seeing promising things about someone backing them, been seeing crowdfunding and things going into keeping the team alive. So I'm really hoping that something does come. We just have to make sure it is sustainable because we see, I think as an example over here in the Major League Rugby, the amount of teams that come in and that come out due to financial difficulties or a variety of different things when it comes to their location, their training facilities, so many different things. They're in, they're out, or they're in a different city. The California team here, the LA team specifically, they've rebranded, 3 or 4 times now. It just continues to happen over and over again. So we've got to look at the sustainability of a team and make sure that if we're setting these people up into a system, these players to put them in a position to play in, week out, it's got to be sustainable. It's got to thrive as best as possible. I think some people have also come out on social media and they've spoken about how we should scrap Super Rugby and we should just go into a 14-team provincial competition in the NPC, which again is something that I would love to see. I love watching the NPC. I love seeing the club rivalries and things like that, and more opportunities to get more players in New Zealand, an opportunity to play in a professional space. But Brad Webber, ex-All Black, obviously, he knows a lot about Super Rugby, playing in it for so many years, and he came out and he said that NPC has been found to be a financial black hole, and if we're already struggling to have Super Rugby teams break even, it would literally be impossible for 14 professional teams to do that. So that is its own conundrum in itself. Again, something I would really like to see. That would be awesome. But again, sustainability comes into this. You have to think about how it's going to last long term, and we can't have a Silver Lake deal propping us up and things like that. You have to figure out how to make it work and stay on the field. I personally believe that Super Rugby is the best avenue for All Blacks. Ideally, I would like to see the South African teams back in Super Rugby because I think that we were at our best when we were playing against those teams. Don't think it's going to happen because I think South Africa has now gone on to greener pastures and they're in their own system. I think that's going to work for them. But Super Rugby teams, I think that's the only way we're going to make this all work. Keeping them in that competition is how we are going to thrive as a New Zealand contingent. And one of the biggest downsides, I think, is just going to is how is the fan going to be impacted? You've seen the huge success stories of Miracle Failangi from Samoa coming onto the Super Rugby stage. That's igniting the flame and blossoming into a competition's premier loose forward. And that's giving a Pacifica fan something to look at and go, this is a quality product. This isn't a player who is kind of on the fringes or playing in a tier 2 nation or a fringe tier 1 nation. This is a player that can really blow something open. And as Pacifica people, they get behind their people more than anyone in the world. And so to see all the success that's come out of all those incredible Pacifica players, what they could potentially do for their Pacifica teams playing week in, week out against these quality oppositions, building and then heading towards a World Cup. This franchise leaving the competition after 2026, it's devastating. I'm hoping that someone will come up and be the white knight and save this team and fund them maybe somewhere else, not North Harbour, not in the counties region. I'm just hoping they're able to navigate steps together and just come together and figure this out. We will see. We will see. But looking ahead, really excited for Super Round this weekend. Really excited to get some sleep because I'm still pretty jet lagged from this Japan trip. But again, Japan, it really reminded me of how global this game is. And Super Rugby over the weekend reminded me that it's going to keep giving us everything. I think it's the best it's ever been in a long time. Huge comebacks, surprise results, plenty of teams beating themselves. It's something where it shows that any team on its day can win. No matter if you're one of Pacifica all the way up to the Hurricanes, everybody can have a chance to win. So really excited to see what Super Round produces this weekend. Check it out this weekend on wherever your streaming platform is if you're in America. Rugby Pass, we get it for free. Stan Sport or Sky Sport over back home. Tune in this weekend because I think these 5 matches are going to be outstanding. We'll be back next week. Thank you for tuning in to the Bonus Point podcast. Thank you for letting me indulge in my Japan trip while the hiatus occurred for the podcast, and really looking forward to chatting some more code this weekend with some amazing guests. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next week.